Hello. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay. Can everybody hear me? If you ask an American to speak louder, you're going to get an American to speak more loudly. So I hope you guys bought into this too. So I go by Spark. It's a little bit cooler than Susan Park. So my parents aren't crazy. They didn't name me Spark, but that's what I like to go by. And that is also my email. It's very catchy. I also want to say I work at Meta, formerly known as Facebook. If you guys haven't watched Mark's keynote describing our new shift, I highly encourage you to do so because I actually work in the VR work experiences at Meta. And I made that jump from software into a hardware, software, PMM type role because I wanted to continue to expand and grow across my career set. I also want to say hello to Connor and Arena, Amy, Ali, and Mira all are very happy you're here. They're very happy you're here. And hi, Arit. It's nice to see former Meta employees in the audience as well. The idea here is what I'm here to do for you guys today is something that I wish someone had done for me. So how many of you in this room are the first product marketer at your company? Nice. Nice. I'm here for you. I know it's tough. How many of you are the first product marketer that works with the people at your company? Like you are the first product marketer, someone on your team or some of your cross-functional members have met for the first time. Yes, this is also for you. So what I'm trying to do with this go-to-market presentation is to give you a jargon-free framework of explaining what we do across the launch process. So that's a big offer. I'm kind of road testing this out. This is my first time presenting it, so please be kind. But at the end of the day, I hope you guys have language tools to explain what we do very simply, as well as have a really concrete framework that hopefully will get you 90% of the way in a go-to-market launch. So let's start first with the whole launch process. Yana talked a lot about this in a product-led process. It does differ from software to hardware, which I'm learning on the Oculus Quest side. But the idea is that you go from idea, research, you build, you test, and you launch. Where I love for GTM planning is to kick off is not where most people think. People think it should kick off here, in the testing, in the alpha, beta. I think it should start at the research function, where you are thinking about your customer at the research phase so you can help shape the product. And that is where we kick off the 4 A's of go-to-marketing. It should start off in the research perspective. So what are the 4 A's of go-to-market? The first is your audience. The customer's mentioned a lot, but it really is your audience. The second is what is your angle, also known as your core value prop, but it's really your angle. Like what is it in for the customer? What are you trying to accomplish? Also known as goals or OKRs, or objective and key results, and activate. How are you going to activate? This differs the most. Most product marketers think most of their job is actually activation. No. We're bigger than that, guys. We can do better. And this is going to be hopefully the premise of the whole talk. So as product marketers, we are the voice of the product to the audience and the voice of the audience to the product. I'm quoting one of my favorite leaders, John Steinbeck, who I was very lucky to get to work for a number of years at Meta, and he is now at DeepMind and the head of marketing. This was his tagline for our product marketing function, and I cannot think of a truer statement. We are here for the audience to explain to them what the product is, and then we need to communicate the audience needs back to product consistently. How do we find this, though? What are the tips to kind of make sure our target is right? You have to define this first. Don't wait. You should not be creating any messaging or things like that without knowing who you're going to speak to. I knew I was going to speak to product marketers today, to you guys. So I knew you were my audience, so I'm going to go with a lot of words on this. Create personas and anecdotes from observed and documented findings, not from personal experiences. This is going to be your ability to argue at a product management table against, hey, their vision sometimes. They'll say, hey, I know this is how I believe it should be, which is fine, but then you could come back with observed and documented behaviors of the audience, hopefully from user or market research to drive this forward. Always try to find overlap points with your target audiences so you can find stronger messaging points to rank them better, and always know your audience and how they rate you versus your competition. This is going to be incredibly important as you help build your perspective, so make sure you have these in mind. I've made a lot of mistakes across these things in defining the audience and what I want to drive. One of my biggest mistakes I ever made when I was early in my product marketing career is doing research on everything about the audience, almost doing a ton of field research, but not honing in on how they actually made the purchase decision. I knew everything else about them, what they did, in so many ways, so much research. At the end of the day, you really need to understand the purchase decision. Whether it's a B2C or a B2B customer, you need to make sure that is the case. Another tip is don't be too narrow, especially if you're trying to drive improvements to your product or increase adoption. One of the best ways to drive innovation for your product is expanding out your audience. Who should we be going after next? Who should this product fit to next? Don't leave that on the table. Also a mistake I've made in times, but honing in too small of an audience, especially when I was too afraid to drive nascent growth in an area. And always remember your target audience in alpha and beta recruitment. I have also made several mistakes where we made a beta too wide and we forgot to keep track of our target audience. The beta turned out great, but when we went to launch, it flopped. And then when we went back to the beta, we realized, oh my goodness, we over-recruited. We didn't recruit enough of our target audience, of the people where this product was supposed to drive change to. And when we launched for that audience, they were like, this actually doesn't work. And when we went back to our beta results, we saw the same. So make sure you're keeping track of this throughout the process and you're just not going through the motions of it. This is our core. Next is angle, which is the fun part of marketing. Audiences are asking three things about your product. Will it save me money? Will it save me time? Or will it improve my life? This is from Jim Lizinski, who I also had the pleasure of working with at Google Chicago. He is currently an MBA professor at Kellogg of Management, author of this book, Zero Moment of Truth. And I think this really sums up the angle that we're trying to drive here. What is in it for the user? Also, as what Jana has said before. So there's going to be a list of things, but you're going to need to rank what is the most important. Take these strongest points and make sure they're woven into the messaging, framework, naming, everything. You need to make sure the name resonates with these perspectives and everything can ring true. Test all of the angles of the messaging, because you're going to have potentially different angles for different target audiences, but they have to work well with each other. You're building triangles, not, circles. You're trying to make all the angles work and to make them build across each other. On top of that, if you're working at an even bigger company, like what I've worked at Google, Meta, or even at Spotify, the product angles that you come up with have to work across the entire company's product suite. It doesn't help if your angle doesn't do well with another product. For instance, we came up with a virtual reality conferencing product earlier this year, Horizon Workrooms, my first B2C launch at Meta, and we had to make sure that we weren't disparaging video conferencing. Yes, it's a different play of virtual reality, which is nice to have a 2D perspective, but we also want people to join with video calling. So you have to think about what is the holistic message we're trying to drive across this, and that it works across the entire suite. Mistakes I've made, again, calling them learnings, marketing it up. Market research versus user research. Market research should be done commercially with at least hundreds of users to drive really distinct purchase decision and audience segmentation. User research is smaller, usually smaller groups, very anecdotally led, a lot of times used to drive user research or product changes to remove friction or drive, short product market fit. Do not conflate the two. Market research is very different in terms of the insights that you'll get and what you can use as more factual understanding of how an audience will react. User research is very helpful with anecdotes and drawing that color in, but I don't know if I would, I'm saying that they're different. Try not to use them both in the same voice. Make sure when you're referencing data points between the two, you understand the population and how they were derived to make sure you're driving the right points. I have come across this barrier a lot where I've accidentally used user research as market findings versus market findings as user research, and they don't always go well together. So think about that. Multiple audiences. You'll have multiple audiences, sometimes you have multiple angles. You gotta make sure that they work well together. And as I mentioned before, if you don't think through the detractors or all of the points of the angles that you're trying to drive, you could end up in a place where you might unintentionally disparage another product within your company suite, which is not where you want to end up as well. So let's talk about accomplishments. This is a little bit my favorite part, because this is really what you're trying to drive, really what you're trying to get done. I thought this quote was very simple. A goal is not always meant to be reached. It often serves simply as something to aim at. And this is actually from Bruce Lee. So when I worked with Bruce Lee, that was a joke. No? Yeah, like, definitely, I think he passed away before I was born. I'm not that old, guys, I know. I've been around, but I think this epitomizes what we're trying to do as product marketers a lot. I know it's hard to shift from marketing goals, product goals. You need to build something to aim at, though, and they need to be thoughtful about what you're trying to aim at. You can think about big, hairy, audacious goals as larger objectives, but you have to think through several layers of objective types. It's not always about product adoption. Maybe it's about changing user behavior. Maybe we want to change people from doing X to Y. Please don't confuse objectives with key results. Key results should have a number. If your key result doesn't have a number, it's not a key result. It's most likely an objective. Please enlist the whole launch team in the goal, especially with the most important goal, and make sure you're prioritizing together with what's most important. Some mistakes I've made: not taking enough time to build goals. They actually take a long time to build. When we launched one of our more complicated updates to an ad serving system last year, it was very hard to figure out our goal because we had to actually enlist data science, sales operations to figure, okay, what is our current trajectory of this product? What are we probably gonna get organically anyway from our sales team's actions? And then what is this product gonna do on top of that? We had to spend a significant amount of time to figure out what that goal could be. But I'm so glad we did, because once we launched the product, we realized right away, like, we were making more revenue. So if we hadn't put this goal together, we wouldn't have figured out. But our revenue making was this. Well, we had predicted it to be like this. So we thought something was wrong, and we were right. We had two major steps going on in the back end, which we had not realized, nor we would have realized if we had not set goals. So your goals are there to help reveal failure points and to ensure your go-to-market is going the way you want it to, not only just to, have things to build. And on top of that, as a leader, I love these goals because it helps ground a lot of the performance conversations I have with people on my team and our Likewise team. Is like, it's not only do you understand your goals, but why aren't you hitting your goals? I'm not gonna ding you if you're not hitting your goals, but you need to understand why. And that will help you understand the product as well as your audience and what is going on so that you can be that voice of the product and voice of the audience back to product as often and as legitimately as you can be. Last but not least, I'm gonna slow this down a little bit because I have time, and also, because I speak a little fast, this is, even though I said that this is not the most important, this is where you spend a ton of time. And I'm gonna go through this between a B2B perspective and a B2C perspective, because thankfully I've now done a little bit of both, but we'll see how these go through. So activation or activating comes at a heavy perspective. And this is actually super important because this tends to be the most visible work that we do as product marketers. What I always aim to do And this is a quote from Erin Cliff, who is the former CMO of Waze, and I actually worked with her when she was the head of marketing at Spotify, is that you should build for and with the community that loves your brand and products. Because at the end of the day, again, you're going back to the audience and the user. You're thinking about what you're trying to drive, and you're trying to activate ways for your product to go out into the ecosystem and create a life of its own. So when it comes to activation, again, a lot of people just think, okay, here's my RACI document. Here's my spreadsheet. Here's my checklist. Here's what I'm going to do. Every time I come into a launch, whether it's from 0 to 1, which I hope it usually is, or if I'm coming in as almost a coach to help drive a launch and make it be more effective, I always ask for, okay, what is our go-to-market overview with our audience, our core messaging, our angles, as well as, what we want to accomplish. And then talk about the activation plan as well. I don't just want to see the activation plan. I want to see everything of what we're trying to accomplish from a GTM perspective, so the whole team and I can have a vision of what we're trying to do with this product. And on top of that too, if you build that sort of presentation, you'll have to get product sign off, you have to get other executives to sign off on it to make sure you're aligned so that you're bringing people through this journey together. Then, please have an asset, deliverable, and RACI document, because you're going to need it to keep track of everything. Because like I said, product marketing's job is not to do everything, and that's actually generally what I have to tell people on my team every day. It does not help for you to throw your body at a situation if something's not going to get done. Your job is to help empower others to make sure it gets done and keep track of it. That goes into my second point. Please empower the GTM team. Product marketing is probably one of the professions, I bet in 5 years, that people will talk a lot about burnout, because we are such a big knitting function. Again, please do not just continue to throw your body at the situation. You have to think about empowering your XFN team to drive bigger and better launches, and that is also a key part of thinking about your activation. It's not about, hey, what can I do? It's hey, who can I enlist to help me do this better? Who can we enlist to make this bigger, better? How do we make this broader so that this becomes a bigger deal for more of the company? Next is align executive leadership to evangelize the product. This should be something that you partner with, hopefully with your product director. I will say doing this can lead to excessive amounts of unblocking, not only internally, but externally. The best anecdote I actually have for this is honestly Mark Zuckerberg is really into the metaverse and into virtual reality. He took a very strong perspective on our Horizon Workrooms launch earlier this year and actually volunteered to take interviews with Gayle King for CBS News talking about how work in the metaverse could look like. He was enlisted to do that by our product management director and our management team to bring this through, but that really opened up so many doors in terms of the knowledge and effectiveness of what's going on. You have executives like that in your suite that you can enroll into your launches, especially at your company. Think about how you're using them as well to tell your story, and that's why you need to make these things as big as you can. Last but not least, think through worst case scenarios. Nothing obviously is worse than assets not arriving in time, deliverables not coming in time, XYZ, but have redundancy plans for what's go and no-go across these. It's often very tight with product launches, things delivering, et cetera. It's your responsibility to think through redundancy plans and what and when you can launch with. And I think thinking through these worst case scenarios will make you feel better when it comes to launch day and make you understand and make your team understand what we can do ahead if something goes wrong versus being in reactive scramble mode. So let's talk about B2C, business to consumer, activation or launches. I like to kind of sum it up in 2 words, which is you're really trying to simplify and inspire action. In order to simplify and inspire, you actually have to do a lot of documentation across this because for better or for worse, the wider your B2C activations go, generally the more people you need to bring in to the fold, and the simpler your message needs to be, so it resonates with every person who is working on getting this product story out to your audience. So what we like to do is build briefs for every checkpoint of the journey to make sure we have consistencies across. So it starts with obviously a product readiness doc. This could be your minimal viable product doc. There's a lot of ways to think about this, but you always start with, a PRD or anything like that. Then you should probably move on to either a market readiness doc, a communication document is what we used to call them at Google, or a market readiness doc. What are we trying to do from a marketing perspective? And this is really where your audience comes to play, the angles you want to drive, and what you want to accomplish. Then you move into maybe a business brief or a creative brief, depending on you're working with an agency. If you're working with an agency, the business brief and creative briefs are super helpful to make sure that they have points of core messaging and perspectives that are built for them to think about either how they should be building the assets for this activation in the simplest way possible, or how they should be thinking about the media and the channels that they're going to be activating in the simplest way possible. It's a lot of work. This is a lot of writing and documentation, but the idea is that it lasts as like a living document to give your teams something to reference so that they can have autonomy to drive and be creative around their channels. Build feedback quickly so you can build trust, especially when you're working with such big teams. Being open about assets, things not coming on time earlier than later will help you. It's only going to get worse as it gets closer to launch time in terms of needing to give out feedback and work. Building a team that you trust will help you make sure that you have a strong launch team together. And then aim to reduce churn. So also as a product marketer, we are at the nexus point of talking between product launch dates, marketing readiness dates, going back and forth. Sometimes it's not good to tell everybody everything. I'm just gonna say that. Sometimes if you over communicate, you could create more churn. I've seen this a number of times, especially with working with agency partners, to be honest, where we were afraid of a product not coming through, but we were able to pull in the engineering resources to kind of get it going, but we lost momentum on the agency side, so the assets weren't ready. So sometimes it's better to watch and wait if you can versus over communicating based upon what you need to drive and what you think is best for your team. From a B2B perspective, this is, I think, very interesting too, because the buying decisions are more for your livelihood. So I like to think about, from a B2B perspective, your goals are to educate, which is why, white papers, which Yana talked about, versus B2C, you're educating an audience and you're impressing them to make a decision to do something that'll help their livelihood, hopefully make their work do better, versus something that could help be more aspirational from a consumer perspective. I would also make sure you listen to sales and market feedback and adjust the product. I've had a number of questions come up to me, people asking, hey, this sales team is not into this product. How do I convince them to bring it to market? Usually I say, if your sales team doesn't want you to sell your product, that's really a bad sign, because that's their job. And usually sales teams want anything new to sell their customers, so I would listen and try to figure out, one, if there's something that we can change, or should we not launch in that market in order to launch better in other places. So if your sales teams is giving you back feedback, always listen. Always make sure there's time for sales enablement on B2B. That is something I always under or overestimated. When we were launching Spotify video ads, I thought this would be a lot sooner, a lot quicker of a process. However, we were actually getting radio buyers to start selling video. That's a very big transition, which we did not account for in our go-to-market sales enablement, which took some time. It took several months to make those adjustments and things like that. And that also leads to my second point, is that you really need to understand the customer base and your current company's position with the relationships of the customer base. Because at Spotify, we had all of these audio, radio relationships, we thought selling video ads would be easy. It was not. different relationships, different buyers, different perspectives. So not only did we have to up the sales enablement, we had to change our sellers' mindsets with their contact lists and who they're going after. So all of this takes time, and you have to think about these aspects when you're activating through. And of course, build trust. And a lot of times, especially in the past few years where things have gotten more confidential and it's tougher to be transparent, the idea is to build trust up and down the working group. Your teams will need to trust that you're making decisions based upon what they know is best when you can't communicate everything widely because you're trying to reduce churn. And likewise, your leadership team will need to trust you that you're making the right decisions to make the product launch work really well. So trust will need to be a huge bedrock of what you're trying to drive across all of your activation teams, and that will help you drive your goals together. So my biggest learnings from here is really understand your expertise and your relationships across B2B and B2C. So your agency teams, your sales teams, who are your go-to people where you can continually trust to get honest answers, whether or not you're activating as checkpoints and as people you want to work closely with to make sure you have a really strong launch. Really use these accomplishments or goals that you set up that hopefully will go beyond just the launch to really have open conversations with all of your partners, not just your teams, on how you're performing. How are we doing on this launch? Is this launch what we expected? How is this product doing now that it's in market? Are we retaining users the way we want to now that the product has been in market for 3 months? Constantly think through this and what you're trying to accomplish and update them. It will help provide an open understanding of what you're driving as a contribution to the company and the team. And this should also help you explain more and more what product marketing is, because you'll have accomplishments under your belt that you are hitting every so often. And last but obviously not least, always listen. It's your job, again, is the knitting function. So you have to listen to your audience, you have to listen to product, you have to listen to your team. So think about yourself as the ingestion point, and you have to have the best information, which comes from listening. So in conclusion, the 4 A's of go-to-market. Understand your audience, understand your targets. For your angle, make sure you're solving a problem for that audience and you're thinking through that angle. For your accomplishments, have goals and milestones. And last but not least, activate. Think through the tactics of your plan and ensure that you can hit your accomplishments. And that is it. And we'll move to questions.
Have a look at this.
Yeah.
Let's take it. Thank you, Spark. Let's take a quick look at the Slido. Latest question.
Do I just use spreadsheets? So I don't. Project management to each project management owner is their own. I personally like a spreadsheet because I can see everything. I've worked within Asana, Trello, a lot of these other things, but I am a little old school. So, but I would say you should find the best one that works for you and your team. I wouldn't recommend one. I've pivoted to what the team needs and what is best for them every time. So I try not to push one through, but we also use a varying amount depending upon what the team needs to accomplish what they want. How do you win over stakeholders that are responsible for other key functions such as email campaigns, social media ads to get them on board with your GTM? Oh, great question. So this is where the accomplishments or the vision of your GTM is really helpful. You shouldn't go in the meeting being like, hey, I need this email campaign. How I always like to start a meeting is, hey, guess what? We're launching what work is gonna look like in virtuality. Don't you want to be a part of this? Like, think about what your bigger goal is, open the meeting that way, and ask them to come on board with you. Like, what you're trying to do is recruit these people to bring their best expertise to driving this. And if you can give them that higher level vision too, you're not just asking them from email campaigns, you're asking them, hey, what do you think is best for the email campaign to make sure this product lands? What do you think is best for us to do on social to engage your community to make sure this product works. You want to empower them, and you can empower them by giving them the vision of what the product's going to do versus giving them a checklist of stuff when. I mean, you also have to tell them when it's due though, so like, you gotta balance it out. But you're really trying to inspire them, which is why this role is so soft skill and so influence heavy. John Steinbeck also said, we trade in influence, and we definitely do. So think about your influential phrases for when you need to bring people on board. Should there be a fifth A named assess, where you measure the success of GTM? If so, what metrics matter the most for GTM success? I will add that. I think that's good. And it'll play out a little 5. Kelly, thank you for the fifth, assess. I think that would be good. I think you should be assessing what you set up as your goals from an accomplishment perspective. Every go-to-market is different. I've had different metrics based upon, evangelization of a product, change of user behavior, product adoption, revenue. It needs to go back to your higher level vision of what you're trying to do. And your product manager or your product management team needs to be on board with these as well, because that's what they're trying to hit as their business goals. So definitely bring it assess, but they should be what have been defined by the team in terms of what you want to drive. Andy is asking this, what percentage of your time do you spend hearing from customers? Never enough, to be honest. I would say we're so lucky that we do have user research and market research perspectives. I would say we always have these in flight. We have a bi-weekly session currently where we just have readouts of user research, and then once every month and a half, we get a market research output in terms of what we're trying to drive within the community. So I think that's how we're currently hearing, but if you can sit in on the sessions as much as you want, especially if you're onboarding new to a product.
Susan.
Am I done? Okay, sorry. I'm done.
I want to say thank you so much to Spark. Thank you very, very much.